Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Thailand Bound. If it's your first time here, I talk about all things Thailand and my name's Peter. Right, today as usual on a Saturday it's story time. I've got 5 good stories lined up for you today guys, but technically it's actually 6 because there's 5 different people sent in the stories, but the last guy sent in 2 short stories. So I don't want to waste your time, I'm going to jump straight in at the deep end and let's get straight into this first story.
สวัสดีค่ะ
Some years back, my wife and I met a British guy and single father living in the States who would come out to Southeast Asia periodically for all the usual reasons. He also wanted to meet up with his soulmate out here. We met him in a small city in Thailand where he told my wife and I his story. As with many Western men, he had subscribed to the various online Asian dating sites and had connected with one young Thai lovely at some point several years ago. He came out to Thailand, met her, and they absolutely clicked and hit it off together. He was slender and good looking, and the object of his desire was a young Thai in her early 20s. He courted her and they toured together happily to resorts to Bangkok and all over. He enjoyed all the pleasures and benefits that a young 20-something Thai girl might accord him behind closed doors, and he declared outright that he felt like that he had met his soulmate. Soulmate is an interesting term and describes what is depressingly rare in any universe. A situation where 2 people can just click, a perfect match for each other. During his month's holiday, he was laughing and dancing and swimming the beach resorts from Hua Hin to Phuket, which were all great fun. All good things must come to an end, as did his tourist visa. He had to return to the States where he promised to wrap up his affairs, arrange for his full-time return, and then he and his young daughter would live forever in joy and happiness, presumably with the lovely guy banging his brains out on a consistent basis till he died from exhaustion in his old age. Soulmates. A week after his return, he's on Facebook and he sees his soulmate's profile and a post showing her current events, her in a traditional Thai wedding dress, her bloated, bald Australian husband happily embracing her and her acquaintances. Future plans with his soulmate were suddenly crushed. It isn't an unusual story at all and easily replicated in Thailand or other such countries. I often wonder what happened to him, but his tale, along with your own reported stories about bar girls, greed, not to say that every Thai woman is some sort of gold digger, are great cautionary stories. I have one other friend who is happily married to a Thai girl who is certainly young enough and sexy enough, but still he has a massage woman who is married with 4 kids who continually lets him know that her husband is a typical Thai unfaithful type with whom she hasn't made love with for years, and hints strongly that she would happily provide full service to him would he be interested. He's a pretty straight guy and the notion of hooking up with her is somewhat unappealing to him, but well, he's only tempted but not really ever going to act on it. For me, I'm 68 years old and relatively happily married to my Filipino wife of nearly 40 years. The relationship isn't perfect because neither of us are perfect, but well, life goes on. Thanks for your stories and cautionary consideration. So there you go guys, another short but sweet one. Another guy bites the dust, as they say. Right, straight into story number 2, and this is another short one. Hi Peter, I follow your channel and was glad to see that you made it back to Thailand this year. I have also made it back, spending 30 days in Phuket. I am an older Australian guy, now 67. I have spent a lot of time in Thailand over the years. No plans to live there because I do become jaded at times, mainly with other Farang antics. I write this after listening to a story about 4 men of a certain ethnic background who attacked a girl in Pattaya. I'm sure you know the story I refer to. Back in 2018, I was in Bangkok and having a few beers with a Thai girl I know well. She was around 40 years old and very pretty. I was a regular customer. She worked in a well-known bar in Soi 4. We headed back to my hotel, a well-known hotel and part of a worldwide chain. We entered the lift, the doors closed and then reopened. 3 large men of that same ethnic background tried to get into the lift. I raised my hand for them to stop, but they pushed into the small lift. The girl huddled behind me, she was very streetwise. They started straight away, obviously mildly intoxicated. Comments like, "You boom boom her, send her to our room next," etc. I told them to stop. One tried to grab at her and I pushed him back with both hands to the chest. I am reasonably fit and worked in the emergency services back home. I am also a quiet guy, but not backward in coming forward. The lift doors opened at our floor. I put the girl out and I proceeded to ask them to come out of the lift as I had enough of them. They declined, instead opting to remain in the lift. I put the girl in the room and went to the main desk to report the behaviour. No one was interested, and as such I said if it was one of your staff alone in the lift, they may have been assaulted. Still, no interest. The next morning at breakfast, the three were sitting eating. I challenged them, causing a small scene. I went and had a meeting with the day manager stating I wanted them out of the hotel. I got no joy from that, so told them I would check out and I wanted a refund of 2 days. They did this okay, probably just to get rid of me. Funny enough, I have never done a bad review of any establishment, but did one of this hotel's response. A few hours later, I received an email from the hotel chain apologising and offering 2 days accommodation at any of their hotels and free. The condition was that I deleted the review. I didn't delete and I replied no thanks. I'm sure this type of behaviour is in all types, but I have to say I have shared lifts many times with intoxicated men, never had this problem. And absolutely, I totally agree with him. If I'd been in his situation, I would have done the same. For the sake of 2 nights, I wouldn't have removed that review. They should have done something about it while he was in the hotel. So let's move straight into story number 3. I became fascinated with Thailand while stopping over in Bangkok airport. I was on my way to Taiwan to visit the parents of my future wife. Long story short, I didn't marry my Taiwanese girlfriend because it just didn't feel right at the time. She is very happy now and I have no regrets with the decision. Part of the reason was on my brief visit to Bangkok airport, I had felt the charm of the Thai people. The warm welcoming smile and the way they greeted you. Thai people smile so much that it makes you want to constantly smile back at them. From that one stopover, I decided to convince my friends and visit Thailand, visiting Bangkok and Phuket in 2012. It was very strange landing in Bangkok for the first time. Being from England, I couldn't figure out why everything was so cheap. I then realised that things aren't cheap in Asia, things are just overpriced in England. Jet-lagged and confused about what to do, I then smelled the famous Thai dish, pad Thai, on the street. I saw an elderly man using a wok while his wife would prepare the fresh ingredients. I decided to try this authentic street food. After handing over my Thai bar, I realised that I've just spent 50p for something that gave me a full stomach. I was alone as my friends were arriving the next morning in Phuket, so I had a night of wandering from bar to bar. The next morning I had booked a VIP car from Bangkok to Phuket. The car wasn't quite VIP, it was just a minibus full of strangers. There was a Swedish girl, 2 chilled out Dutch guys, 2 young skating type rebellious Western guys who would call each other dudes, and a middle-aged over-opinionated angry Western guy with his Thai wife. A car full of 8 strangers, all expecting a VIP experience, only to be crammed into a 10-year-old Toyota people carrier with stale air conditioning. So it came as no surprise that we were all disappointed, and the angry Western guy had expressed himself to the driver by asking where was his VIP car. The Thai driver didn't seem to understand him. Staying calm, he kept a poker face only for the angry Western guy to shout even louder. Like the Thai driver would magically understand English because he was now raising his voice. "Oh yes, here's your private VIP car. I understand you now, sir, that you're speaking louder. I didn't before because you were talking at a normal level." So doing the English gentleman thing, I decided to calm the angry Western guy down by explaining that we were all in the same boat, or in this case, the minibus. The journey was to last for 12 hours, and although very cramped, my karma was being instantly rewarded that day as I was squashed up next to this Swedish girl. Everything about her was very Swedish. The blonde hair, accent, and her openness towards rubbing body parts next to strangers. She was a kind of Swedish girl who would enter a sauna naked after she danced naked on the beach at 3 a.m. during their 100 days of sunshine in Sweden. To add to my journey, I was seated next to two fun-loving Dutch guys who were a joke a minute. Between the four of us, we managed to calm the angry Western guy down. He went from, "I want to knock this Thai man's block off," to "I'll just sit here quietly in the rear back seat." The 12 hours didn't seem like 12 hours because we were constantly making jokes about everything that goes wrong in Thailand. How a VIP car is not really a VIP experience, and how you can find a McDonald's fast food restaurant in a hospital. I quickly learned that showing the soles of your feet in public to Thai people is considered very rude, but shooting ping pong balls from one's private parts is fine. I've always been a very serious person, but Thailand really changed my outlook on life. How we can choose to be angry towards a situation like the angry Western guy, or we can choose to just see the funny side to things like the two Dutch guys did. Not only did I have the most amazing road trip of laughter, I woke up in Phuket with the sweaty head of a Swedish blonde on my shoulder. We later exchanged details, and YouTube will not approve of what happened next. My first memory of Phuket was visiting the bars at night time. There was a bar called the Freedom Bar, owned by a British guy who served time in Her Majesty's prison, hence the name of the bar, after he served his time. It was a strange feeling walking into a bar and being greeted by so many girls. Although it wasn't a bar where you can take the girls home, all the staff were so welcoming. The owner then gave us a guide on what to do and what bars to visit. The next bar we visited, we were jumped on by the girls. We were all very strong guys, and the girls jumped on us and started making funny sexual noises that resembled a squeak in bed. We were laughing so hard that I struggled to stand up straight. I almost fell to the floor and had to use the bar top to support myself. A girl jumped off me and she jumped onto my not so strong friend, and they both ended up on the floor. I laughed so hard that I nearly wet myself. The night went on, and at one point I needed to use a toilet. Stumbling to the toilets, I was amazed at the ice-filled urinals, and it was oddly satisfying melting them with my beer-fueled pee. And then to my horror, my neck snapped twice, and then a little Thai man put me into a headlock, something that Macho Man Randy Savage would do to Hulk Hogan during WrestleMania. My hands being tied up, I had no control over where to point my dick. He would then crack my back, and as he did so, a pee would go to the next urinal. After I finished peeing, I left a 100 baht tip for that very Thai experience. On reflection, no guide in the world can prepare you for this. Beware of men snapping your neck in the toilets and asking for your money, said no part of the Lonely Planet book ever. The next time I needed to pee, I would wait for someone to go before me so that he was busy. But what a unique Thai experience. On meeting my first bar girl, I fell head over heels with a girl called M. She was so beautiful and had the smiles of 1,000 supermodels. If her auntie was a celebrity, it would be Lucy Liu in her prime. M had beautiful cheekbones, a slim body with golden brown skin. Her eyes just glowed, and her lips just spelt, "Take my money now." This seemed too good to be true, to be able to take this gorgeous girl away by paying for a drink and a bar fine. She sat on the back of my scooter and hugged me while the wind went through our hair. We took a midnight walk along the beach with the moonlight guiding us. We relaxed on the sun lounges to gaze at the night sky. And then out of nowhere, M abruptly gestured that we had to go quickly because we were being watched. We could see a man on his motorbike in the distance lighting a cigarette and exposing his face. She said she wanted to go back to the bar, and I thought this was odd as I had already paid the bar fine. Being the nice guy that I am, I made no fuss and drove her back to the bar. Confused and really frustrated, I decided to take a quiet walk along the seafront, listening to the tranquil sounds of the Phuket waters with minimal street lighting to find my way. I walked up and down with a can of beer in my hands. To my horror, I was approached by a skinny-looking Thai man with teeth like a lab rat. He pulled out a steak knife and threatened to stab me. "You boom boom M," he said, shaking with his knife. He got louder and louder. It instantly occurred to me that I was being followed all that time from flirting with M in the bar to our romantic beach walk. M was aware of this, and this explains her abrupt departure. I took the Buddhist approach of calming him down, palms open, and asking him what was wrong. He told me that M was his girlfriend. I could see straight away that he was madly in love with M, and all that jealousy in him was built up to pull a knife out on a stranger. I stared straight into his eyes and decided he didn't have the eyes of a really bad guy. He also didn't have the strength to dispose of my body. I was twice his size. I was tempted to disarm him. I had to slap myself across the face and remind myself that I'm not Steven Seagal, and it's just easier to calm him down rather than to resort into violence. I ended up being very open with him and assured him that I didn't know she had a boyfriend. It wasn't like she was wearing "I have a boyfriend" badge on or anything. He would never have understood my sarcasm, and he then put his steak knife back into his pocket and drove off into the night. Taking a large gulp of my beer, I rolled back to the bar and I explained all this to the bar owner, who was an English-speaking Australian man. He was very understanding, and the next night M had come to apologise to me. She explained that she broke up with her boyfriend before working at the bar. She then went back to my hotel room with me. I didn't have to pay any bar fine, and she didn't want any money the morning after. She was truly sorry she had put me through that experience. I don't know what M said to her ex-boyfriend, but he didn't pull a knife out on me again. I didn't believe M's story of breaking up with her Thai boyfriend. I just enjoyed her company while it lasted. I felt bad for M's situation, how she would have to work in a bar to support her family and put her childhood sweetheart through all of this jealousy. So, for the rest of the 2-week holiday, my friend and I would visit the bar daily, ring the bell and buy all the girls a drink, get some hugs and move on to the next bar. We took nothing seriously and just enjoyed the Thai bar girl experience right up to the end of our holiday. If M's jealous ex-boyfriend didn't pull a knife out on me, I would have spent the rest of my holiday with M. I feel fortunate that I had a wake-up call with a knife experience earlier on while visiting Thailand, so as not to let my guard completely down in the future. I'm also thankful that Thai people are humble, kind and reasonable people if you're honest with them. Everything happens for a reason, and I promised myself to never even think about bringing a bar girl to meet my parents. So there you go, another interesting story. Quite lucky there with the guy with a knife. It wasn't his fault, but obviously, Thai men are just as jealous as any other men around the world, and being alone on a beach with somebody's girlfriend is not a good situation to be in. Okay, let's jump straight into story number 4. I love the channel and the work you do. Thank you. I wanted to share this little story about an experience I had in Bangkok. I hope this story is of interest to you and your subscribers. At the age of 30, I upped and left my boring single life in the UK for a year of backpacking, exploring Southeast Asia. This story happened when I was about 4 months into my trip. I had already visited Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia and Vietnam for a month in each country. Whilst passing through Bangkok for the 3rd time on this trip, I was planning to be there 3 nights before making my way down to the Thai islands in the south. On the first night, I went out to a few bars with a guy I had met in Vietnam a few weeks prior. He had not been to Bangkok before and was keen to see some sights. After a day of visiting the Grand Palace and Wat Po, we found ourselves on the Khalsan Road, having a few beers in the bars there, and ended up in a nightclub called The Club, full of backpackers and young trendy types. The beers were flowing and we were having a great night. There were a lot of local girls in this club along with young Western backpackers. There was a good vibe, loud dance music, and it was very busy. Everyone looked to be having fun. I was having a cigarette in one of those glass door cordoned off areas where you can smoke. I got chatting to one of the Thai girls who was with 3 other friends, all in their 20s and very attractive. Most were a little shy at speaking to a Farang, but the girl I got chatting to was confident and friendly. Her English was pretty much perfect, and we chain smoked a couple more cigarettes before going to the bar and getting another drink. It was all smiles, and I sensed an obvious connection between us. Over the last 4 months, I had only ever met Western girls from Canada, Australia and Europe who were also backpacking, so to converse with a Thai girl who spoke very good English was a refreshing change. The friend I was with just warned me to be careful, as she may be a working girl, a pickpocket or a scammer. I was naturally quite cautious, as you should be with a stranger, having my wits about me, and I wasn't too drunk. Her flirting and talking was great, and the conversation flowed naturally. We all had a dance together and carried on drinking shots until the club shut. I asked her what her plans were when we were out on the street, and she made it obvious that she wanted to come home with me and asked where I was staying. She said goodbye to her friends, and we walked back to my little guest house, which was within walking distance from the Carlson Road. We were walking hand in hand together, grabbing some street food on the way. I decided to test the water with her status and said, "Damn, I only have 700 baht left," to which she replied, "That's fine, you don't need any money," which put my mind at rest. When we got back to the guest house, the night porter started talking loudly to the girl and she handed over her ID. The conversation got a little heated and she handed over a 500 baht note to him. When we got up to the room, I asked what happened in the reception. When voices were raised, she said the security said that local girls are not allowed to stay here unless they pay the hotel's joiners charge, and we treat all you working girls the same. That made her very angry, as she shouted at him, stating that she was not a bar girl and in fact she was an English teacher. Now I know why her English is so good. I immediately said I will give her the 500 baht back. She replied with a smile, "No way, I will pay this time. How about you pay tomorrow night?" I thought this was very honest of her, and we continued to have a great night together. In the morning, I was quite hungover. We arranged to see each other the next evening for food and some drinks again. I honestly didn't think she would turn up the next day, but sure enough, after a lazy day of getting some washing done, checking emails and some shopping, she turned up at the restaurant area of my guest house, and unbelievably, she was on time. I was a little taken aback, but had a quick shower and got changed and ready to go out with her. We went out for some Indian food. She paid for the whole meal, and now I was 100% convinced she was a genuine girl with no hidden agenda. I insisted I pay for the rest of the night. We hit a couple of bars and shared a few cocktails, then headed back to my hotel again. The same security guard was at reception and gave us a dirty look as we walked in. I paid him the 500 baht and walked up the stairs without saying anything. We had another great night of bedroom gymnastics and fell asleep in each other's arms until morning. We parted ways in the morning, exchanging Facebook names, and left with all smiles. What a fun couple of days it had been, with no awkwardness or any mention of money being exchanged. The next day I flew down to Krabi and continued on my trip. We never saw each other again, but kept in touch via Facebook. I saw on her profile that she was previously married to an Englishman, but now divorced, and it was plain to me that she only liked Western men. This assured me that she had a professional career and that simply Western men were her type. When I visit Thailand now, I preach that you can meet genuine Thai girls. Not every one of them is a money grabber or a working girl out to fleece you. We occasionally keep in touch now, and it's around 10 years later, messaging a few times a year to catch up and laugh about the time we spent together. She is now with a European man and they look to be very happy together. I am now married off with kids myself, but fondly remember my little fling with a genuine Thai girl. Thanks, and keep up the good work on the channel, and best wishes with the move over to Thailand. So there you go, guys. Quite a nice story there, and it's true what he says about finding a nice girl in Thailand. The problem is, you know, if you go hunting for these girls in go-go bars and beer bars, then the chances are you're probably not going to find a straight girl. What you'll find, he was obviously quite young there. He was 30, and what you find with some of the Thai girls, they are interested in real relationships, dating with foreigners. So they head down to the younger ones. They'll head down to somewhere like Carlson Road, where they know younger backpacker types hang out, and you know, they just want to meet these guys. It's something different. It's no different to a Western guy wanting to meet an Asian woman. You know, it can be just something as simple as that. Obviously, she's a school teacher, which explained her English away. Genuine girl. They liked each other, and you know, it was a nice story. Why not? All right, let's go into our. We're going to go into our final two stories now. When I read these, I was a bit kind of like shaking my head and raising my eyelids, but I'm not going to be opinionated and say anything about them. I'll just read them out, and I'll let you guys make up your minds about these two stories. Okay, so it's the last one, but there's another little one after this. This was my very first trip to Thailand. It was going to be the same story as many other guys. I had been married for 18 years, worked hard and done my best for my family, then everything fell apart. I'm divorced now and was wondering what the hell had happened. I got invited to come along to Thailand with a guy from work who has been numerous times and knows the ropes apparently. I did some research before heading out to Thailand. I arrived in Pattaya not knowing what to expect, but got a big awakening, what with all the bars, girls and go-go bars. Believe it or not, I met the Thai love of my life in the Spider Girl bar. She had just arrived from her village and could hardly speak English, but we just clicked. I found out her name was Nan and ended up staying with her and giving her 2,000 baht for her time. Everybody had warned me about falling for a bar girl, but I did fall for her. I really liked her. I found out later that she had a Thai husband. She told me that she had been working as a cook because she wanted to save money to have her daughter educated properly. She had saved quite a bit over time, but her husband demanded the money one day, telling her he wanted to buy a new car. She went on to tell me that she'd been saving for a long time for her daughter's school fees. She flatly refused to hand over the money, so he shot his wife in the leg and stole her money anyway, which explained the large scar on her left leg. Apparently this is why she ended up working in the bar, to make fast money to try and recuperate the money for her daughter's education. All good things must come to an end, and it was time for me to go home. I went to her bar to say goodbye. She wanted to stay with me on my last night, but I explained that I didn't have enough money to pay the bar fine. So she offered to pay the bar fine herself. How could I refuse an offer like that? I took her up on her offer, and she came back with me on my last night in Pattaya. We had a brilliant night together, and I promised I'd be back soon. Yes, I had been bitten by the Thailand bug, and yes, I was quite naive, but in my defense, I would say, remember, this was my first time to the land of smiles. In the end, I ended up giving her 1,600 baht, and I was left with virtually nothing but good memories. I put her in the back of a BART bus, sent her back to central Pattaya, as I was staying in Jomtien on this trip. At this point, I was feeling quite emotional, but told myself this was all part of that Thailand game. Now, this next bit might be a bit hard to swallow, but I swear this really happened. After putting her in the back of the BART bus, I was walking back to my hotel. I put my hands in my pockets and discovered she'd secretly slid the money I had given her into my pocket. So basically, she left with nothing. Did she really like me? On my next trip to Pattaya, I went straight to her bar. She wasn't there, and I was told that the bar scene wasn't for her and she had gone back to her village. To this day, I still believe she was a decent girl with good intentions. I wish I could go back 7 years to meet her knowing what I know now. I still think about her often. Fantastic memories of my first love in Thailand. I hope the world is treating her right, and I hope she is happy. Right, as I say, guys, on that one, I'm not going to say anything about it. You make up your own minds. Let's jump straight into the last one of the day, from the same guy who sent that one in. My next story takes place well after being a now seasoned veteran of Thailand, and this story took place on maybe my 6th or 7th trip in 2 years. I had met a girl from a quiet beer bar near my condo in Jomtien that I used to pop into at the end of most nights on the way home. It was quite a small bar, but there were several pretty girls working in this bar. I met one who I quite took a fancy to. The girl was called Pong, and I spent time with her on several different evenings. Pong had mentioned that she'd love to come back to England with me, as I had been up country to visit her family. I thought I was by now very experienced, but it seems I was greener than I thought. I had met her on a previous trip, and I had been sending her a monthly allowance so that her kids could go to school and she could buy medicine for her sick buffalo. Haha. When I was back home, I would call Pong daily. Whenever I spoke with her, there was something not quite right. I don't know what it was, but there was something. I could just sense it. There's an old saying that says, trust your instincts. Well, at the time I was working for myself, so I decided to jump on an aircraft and fly out to Thailand to see for myself. When I arrived at Pong's small bar, all of the girls just froze and looked at me in what appeared to be disbelief. Remember the advert for the woodpecker cider years ago where the whole bar stops, goes quiet and stares? Well, this is what it felt like for me. The cashier came over and steered me to the far end of the bar and sat me down. Next, who should appear but my darling Tilak on the arm of an old guy. I wasn't completely surprised, but the guy must have been 80 and not the sharpest tool in the box. He was the only person in the bar that wasn't aware of the situation. Pong was dumbstruck. She'd been caught out. It turns out she was living with this guy. He was spending a fortune on her. I didn't make a scene. If she wanted to be with him, that was fine by me. I thought I would just walk away with my head held high and told myself just to move on to the next bar and its new possibilities. I didn't walk away. Instead, I stayed in the bar drinking, mainly to make life uncomfortable for her, if I'm honest. At about 8 o'clock, Pong and the old guy said goodnight to everyone and left the bar. So I thought that was the end of the night's entertainment, but no. About an hour later, Pong comes back to the bar with her sister and straight over to me. After some attempted yak by Pong, BS basically, I told her she can't have us both. She needs to either choose the old guy or me. I went on to tell her I didn't care either way. If she thought he was better than me, that's fine. Choose him and I'll walk away. Plenty of fish in the sea, right? I think this part of the story is going to be quite predictable because we ended up drinking together for the remainder of the evening, and at the end of the night, my judgment being clouded by alcohol, Pong ended up in my room once again. We ended up having a great night of aerobics. She told me that the old guy couldn't manage it any longer and she had really enjoyed the night with me. The whole situation got into a really weird routine. Pong would stay with the old guy all day. He would take her shopping, buy her food. Then they would come to the bar for a couple of drinks early. They would both go home because he was tired. She would then head back out to meet me at her bar. After a while, and after brooding for a while, I took the decision to tell Pong to stay with the other guy and take care of him. I just didn't like this situation any longer. It was a novelty at first, but the novelty soon wore thin quickly. I went back to being young, free and single again. Well, free and single maybe. I met another girl in a bar who I really liked and was quite nice. I decided I wanted to take her out of the bar and let her show me around like a tourist, as I really liked her company. She agreed, so we decided on a trip to Ayutthaya. It was a great trip and I think she had a great time looking at the temples and being away from the bar scene. I remember one day thinking to myself, everything in the world is now good. Pong has her boyfriend and I am with an even nicer girl who I really like. This new girl was called Jip. I stayed with Jip for the remainder of my holiday. One point I have forgotten to mention in this story is that Jip worked in the same bar as Pong. So one day Jip and I are having a quiet drink alone in the bar when who should walk in but Pong, her sister and a third girl. The next thing I know is that Pong and the other two girls attack Jip. I don't know why, but it was quite vicious, but I did manage to break it up. I remember thinking at the time, if this is because Pong is jealous of Jip, she's got a hell of a nerve because I caught her red-handed with the old guy and yet here she was playing the victim. Anyway, it all seemed to quieten down and I said to Jip, let's leave. Jip and I left the bar and walked up a quiet soy when everything had calmed down. I couldn't believe what happened next. Pong came running up the soy, jumped on Jip, and the pair of them ended up rolling around in the dirt fighting. Pong's sister and her friend tried to hold me back so that I couldn't intervene and stop the fight. The next thing I see is the police turning up out of nowhere. They actually turned out to be the tourist police, so not so bad, and one of them said to me, "Look, I would leave this area quickly if I was you." I said, "It's not me fighting, why should I run away?" He said, "Because you're involved, the regular police will arrest you and take you to the police station." Again, I asked him, why should I leave? I haven't done anything wrong. He basically explained to me that if I hadn't got on the plane and come to Thailand, this wouldn't have happened, so it's my fault. That's how they look at it. Don't you just love their logic? I took his advice and let them sort it out by themselves. I kept a low profile for the rest of this trip and took Jip to Krabi on the next trip. I learnt a valuable lesson though. It's all about not losing face in Thailand. Although Pong didn't really care if she was with me or not, the fact that I took another girl out of the same bar made her lose face in front of all the other girls in the bar, so she had to seek revenge on Jip. That's just how it is in Thailand. With all of what I have explained here, I still have a fantastic time every time I visit Thailand, and yes, meeting up with Jip is on the agenda for my next trip. There you go, guys. That's a strange one. Quite amusing. Their logic is a bit strange sometimes, but you're a guest in their country, so don't fight it, as they say. When in Rome, go along. All right, guys, that's it for this trip. 6 great stories there. I hope you enjoyed them. And as always, Friday, 9 p.m. for the live stream. I hope you can come along and join in, guys. If you don't like the live streams, not really into live streams, there'll be more stories read out on this channel next Saturday. And once again, guys, if you're sitting on a story and you're not sure whether to send it in to me. I'll change names. I'll read it out on the channel and you can listen to your story as you've listened to these stories today. All that's left to say, if you like what I do here, why not consider subscribing? If you'd like to support me, there's a link in the description to maybe buy me a beer or a coffee, up to you. And of course, you can always join as a member. So thanks, guys, and I'll catch you all Friday, 9 p.m.